This episode of the BeanCast is brought to you by Methodify by Delvinia. Get real-world customer feedback in hours, not weeks. Schedule your demo and get a free $20 Amazon gift card. Go to methodify.it/BeanCast and Methodify it today. Bandwidth provided by Recursive Squirrel Interactive. Visit them on the web at recursivesquirrel.com. Episode 602, Treating Your Customers Better. July 27th, 2020. It's time for this week's edition of the BeanCast, a weekly discussion about the news and issues facing marketers today. I'm your host, Bob Norton. Thanks for joining us. For years now, the entire marketing world has been captivated by the idea of brand purpose. But now one of the original proponents of the philosophy says that the pitfalls of it often outweigh the benefits. What are the dangers he sees? Tonight we'll discuss. Also, TikTok considers its options. What to do about Google's stupid AI. Nielsen proposes yet another method for digital measurement. Plus this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. That's the lineup. Let's meet tonight's panel. Thanks for joining us for this week's BeanCast. I'm Bob Norp, and with me on the panel for this evening, we start with the founder and principal of the Idea Integration Company. Mr. Saul Colt joins us. Hi, Saul.
Hey, Bob. Holy mackerel, am I excited to be here.
I'm glad you're excited to be here. Now, also with us, we have freelance copywriter and two-time author, Mr. Dan Goldgeyer. Hi, Dan.
Hey, Bob. It's always great to be back on the BeanCast.
Well, I'm glad. I'm glad I'm giving some kind of joy to people out there. And finally, we have the co-host of Marketing Over Coffee and partner at Trust Insights, Mr. John J. Wall. John, I don't have you on the show nearly enough. I'm glad you can make it.
Thanks. It's it's been so insane lately. All of us now finally back in our houses. Maybe we'll be able to get it together a little more. It's not so insane.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Well, I wanted to talk about something that came up in the news this past week. Apparently, the guy who wrote Goodvertising, which was the seminal work that dealt with things like brand purpose and how brands should all have some kind of purpose beyond what they're doing to sell products, but should have a purpose towards some kind of social good. He apparently has come out with a new book called The Hero Trap, which kind of sort of, Dan, dismantles a lot of the thinking of Goodvertising and starts to maybe question some of the tactics of purpose marketing, saying that brands fall into a trap often where they kind of make themselves seem better than they are in order to get some kind of additional sales growth, but nobody's really falling for it. So what's your thoughts on this? I'd love your opinion about whether or not purpose is truly in question and whether or not this new reckoning by the author of Goodvertising is something to be paying attention to.
Yeah, well, I think it is. I actually have a copy of his first book. It was written in 2012. It's called Goodvertising. It's a very you got to say the name, because I was like, I am so woefully unprepared. I forgot to write down his name in my show notes. Yeah, the author's name is Thomas Kolster.
Thank you.
And his book was called Goodvertising, and it's a very thick book. It's almost like an advertising show annual that compiled a lot of what he called advertising for good. Corporate social responsibility initiatives. And back then, the Pepsi Refresh Project was one of the big ones that he highlighted, among other things. One thing I noticed, and I was looking at this book this morning, is that he hardly mentions the phrase brand purpose at all. He talks about advertising for good. He talks about corporate social responsibility. And I think small part of the problem, is that the term brand purpose has just become bastardized in the last few years. If you asked 5 marketing professionals to define what brand purpose is, you'd get 5 different opinions. And there have been a couple of pieces, a couple of other columns. I've written about it on Talent Zoo a little bit, but there was a great post about it from a fellow named Tom Roach. He's a strategist in London, and he wrote something last month about brand purpose. And there was also a related column from Andrew Ross Sorkin in the New York Times this week. I think the problem is that the vast majority of brands can't live up to the ideals that people expect when they talk about this idea of brand purpose. Brands, technically speaking, they are corporations or they're subsets of corporations. And so inevitably, it's going to be hypocritical for them to run a lot of ads that preach values like environmental awareness or sustainability or diversity or any sort of social issue when that corporation can go without most of us noticing, supporting politicians, donating money, lobbying for policies that oppose those values. So in advertising and marketing, we tend to be very focused on what we, making our clients look good. Of course, that's what we want to do. And we don't really peel back the onion to sort of look at these contradictions. And we're much more willing as an industry, I think, to forgive or overlook the sins of brands that we think they're woke or they're just saying the right things, even if they're not doing them. And the upshot of all of that is that it ruins a lot of whatever credibility we have left when we embrace that work. And I think Thomas is starting to realize that. That was part of the column that we saw in Adweek this week, is that you can't go that lofty. Most brands can't get away with it. And the more you question what they're doing behind the scenes, the more hypocritical they look doing it. And so we're going to have these conversations in the next few years, and we've seen them in, especially with Black Lives Matter, when we had so many companies come out and claim Black Lives Matter and pretend to support that. When you look and you peel back what they're doing internally, they never supported that cause, and they haven't hired and promoted Black talent. So that's just one of the issues that I think shows the contradictions in promoting an idea like brand purpose. And I think, advertisers and marketers, we need to be a lot more careful about it.
Is part of the problem just over promotion?
So
and it's just like, that's my question. And so you jump in right after me, but it's just like, we get into these traps where we're trying to over promote, we're trying to over live up to this ideal when we're really just not capable of doing it. We don't have the resources or the commitment. It's okay for a brand to stand up for things like Black Lives Matter, but at the same time, they have to be honest and say, we're not living up to that right now, and we need to do more in that space, and not try to pitch themselves as a savior. And that's what we do in advertising a lot of times. We over pitch. We try to pitch ourselves as savior or hero, as opposed to just an honest admission. But anyway, go ahead, Saul. What were you going to say?
So I'm going to come at this from a completely different approach and say I disagree completely with the author. Brands absolutely should have a purpose. When you think of, brand purpose, it's, Dove purpose, but I'm pretty sure it's something along the lines of improving confidence of girls around the world. When you think of Microsoft, their brand purpose is a computer on every desk. A company's brand purpose shouldn't be Black Lives Matter. They should be Black Lives Matter or share it publicly. But the brand purpose is your North Star. It's your vision. It's the thing that you are thinking 10, 15 years out about your company, and it's the thing that keeps you on track. It's almost like your priority list. So I really think the author is Dan, I think you said that we've bastardized what brand purpose is, and marketing executives would all have it differently. I kind of disagree. I think marketing people still have it pretty locked in. I think it's media and customer expectation has sort of changed what the brand purpose should be. Because one of the takeaways I had from, I haven't read this book, but I've read half a dozen sort of reviews and articles on it, and I watched a 45-minute keynote from the author in preparation for tonight. And the thing that he kept coming back to, or at least that resonated with me, was he said that leaders, and he's using global leaders being not only the CEO but also the brand itself, have to stop saying believe in us and they have to start inspiring people to believe in themselves. And man, that got under my skin because I don't want a brand to be doing that for me. I'm not looking for, Apple to make me feel better about myself, because their only job is to manipulate me into buying something, and I'm comfortable with that because I know that's their only job. So I think there's a much larger, conversation here about why we even care. Why do we look to brands for anything other than to provide us with the things we want and need? Because like, one of the things the author kept coming back to was the CEO of whatever, Exxon Valdez, about it, and they're like, well, his number one mission is to get you to forget that they flooded the oceans or whatever. And it's like, not really. His number one mission is to please his shareholders, and that's his only mission in life. So why are we looking to people like Rupert Murdoch and Bob Iger and all these things to make our lives better? Their only promise to us is that they're going to give us products we want to pay for. And if they don't give us those products, we won't pay for them.
But that's
so
not the focus of.
I really think that, and I could be.
Go ahead, Dan.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. There's a little cutting in and out. But that's not what the focus of advertising and marketing has been for the last 10, 15 years. We don't talk about who's got a better product or a service or features or benefits, or some people. A lot of brands don't. It's about self-actualization. It's about making me feel better about myself by associating with this brand, being part of movements, or being part of something larger than myself. And that's what we've been selling. And I don't agree. I mean, I wish. I don't want the brand to be the hero. I want the product to be the hero.
It's a no-win situation. It's a no-win situation for the brands. I think that's the clear thing that we need to walk away from. Because if they don't take a stand and believe in this cause that's very popular among people in the marketplace, whichever cause that happens to be at that particular time, they're lambasted for not taking a stand. But at the same time, if they take a stand and they can't commit to it, or they can't live up to it, they're vilified in that sense as well. It's almost like it's more important for companies to have an ethical way of operating as opposed to marketing the fact that they have an ethical way of operating. By using the purpose as a marketing tool, they're really setting themselves up for a lot of failure and hurt, as opposed to just having a clean ethics and operating in a clean way. I mean, be supportive of those. Put your money where your mouth is, that type of thing.
Oh, yeah, no, you totally nailed it. I mean, that's...
Go ahead, John.
Well, I was gonna say, you just completely nailed it. And that's the most important thing right now, is that, you can say a corporation and a brand exists to maximize shareholder value, but that's assuming that there's moral and ethical, moral and ethical stance and the rails on the road, that all behavior is going to be moral and ethical. And that's not the case. And I think we're seeing an interesting explosion now, just because people don't see that from the government either. Usually the government's kind of the morals and ethics of last resort. And, for the past 4 years, it's been a free for all on that front too. So people are kind of looking around to see who's got a compass.
Yeah. So, Saul, do you want to say something? I mean, I'm sorry to cut you off. You got a little bit of a lag and you're cutting in and out a little bit, but just go for it.
Well, to go around the horn, can you guys think of any company that actually markets its purpose? Besides, like Columbia Sportswear or something like that. Like, I don't, like, all the usual suspects don't put their purpose first. They kind of put their purpose last in a lot of ways. Like, it's like,
Well, wouldn't you say that Nike is one of those companies
that lead with their purpose?
Wouldn't you say Nike's one of those companies? I mean, that's a brand that you personally have a lot of investment in. You feel very strongly about them, and they not only stand up for causes that they believe in, but they also stay strongly aligned with their purpose, which is exercise and health and things like that.
But I think we're getting the activism and the purpose confused, because Nike, like, their number one mission in life is to make an athlete out of everybody, or their number one goal as a business is to make an athlete out of everybody. The fact that they stand up for Black Lives Matters, and the fact that they stand up for a lot of different things isn't their purpose. Like they didn't go into business to generate press around activism. They got into business to create joggers.
But I would argue
If you really want to go back to
Saul,
like day one sort of thing.
Well,
I would argue that let you jump in after me, Dan. But I would argue that this purpose of turning everybody into an athlete means that everybody deserves a chance to be an athlete. So they're very much about body positivity. They're very much about Black Lives Matter. They're very much about female strength, and it's just like feminine strength. I mean, they're doing all the things that are necessary to make everybody an athlete and give everybody the same opportunity. And in a lot of ways, their activism aligns with their purpose. But go ahead, Dan. You were going to say something.
Okay, well, let me just say, in the case of Nike, they've been wrestling with sexism and racism in the corporation in the last few years. They've had lawsuits about this. I mean,
true.
The difference between, yes, they've been very out front, and this is why marketers fall into this trap, is because they've been so out front about supporting folks like Colin Kaepernick and of course female athletes, yet their own house is not in order. But I think that one of the things we've also seen in the last few years, and I don't have a lot of examples of them, I think it's a lot easier for startups and smaller companies to start in with this leading with a purpose before they lead with any sort of product. To Saul's point, when he's, I think a lot of legacy companies are trying to back into this brand purpose, and that's where I think it's absolutely hypocritical. The ones that have been in business for tens of decades, and then all of a sudden, we're not a car company, we're a people company or something like that. You see the hypocritical notions of it from these older companies, but I think a lot of startups are really trying to lead with whatever they think purpose is.
We always come to the same conclusion every time we have this conversation about purpose, which is that, brands, it goes along with what Saul's saying, John. I mean, Saul brings up a great point that we always come to, which is that brands are not necessarily believable in this role. It's just like that, they're always going to fall short when it comes down to talking about their purpose or their activism or their support of these issues. So should brands really be engaged in this? Should brands mix up their corporate stance with their advertising? It seems like it's just self-serving in every single instance.
Yeah, no, if they're not walking the walk, if you weren't already dealing with this problem before it became the topic of the day, then yeah, you should probably stay away from it. Because you're definitely not going to be able to live up to the hype unless you've actually already been doing it.
But it's also something that the advertising agency business and marketers are pushing on clients. If you take a look at what we talk about as an industry, what's being celebrated, the work that's being celebrated, it's a lot of this purpose work, and it's not focused on product. And so I think that we're sort of insisting that brands adopt these ideas in their consumer-facing messages, whether they live up to them or not.
Well, that's one way to pull it through the market, but yeah, it's a short-term profits definitely don't gain from that.
Well, I want to move on. I'm going to talk next about TikTok and the recent calls for banning it in the U.S. By the certain orange president. We'll get to that in just a minute. But first, I want to talk about our sponsor for the night, Methodify by Delvinia, and give you a chance, or someone you know a chance, to get a $20 Amazon gift card just for checking them out. Now, you know the drill. I mean, if you're doing work right now, if you're making decisions, you're doing so under a very stressful cloud of lots of malaise and lots of stress and lots of problems and lots of anger and frustration, and you're talking to consumers who are all dealing with the exact same thing. So if you say one wrong thing in this powder keg and you unleash some kind of advertising into the world that is not quite saying exactly what you want it to, a social media firestorm could result. And this is where our sponsor, Methodify by Delvinia, can help you out. Now, Methodify collects real feedback from actual customers, not just anybody, not just a panel, but your actual customers on concepts, on creative, before you release it to the world. And the whole process, the entire process, is going to take only hours, not days. Now, Methodify gives insight professionals and senior marketers information that they need to power better decisions that will protect their brand and themselves. Now, Methodify has been used to test digital creative for a number of brands in lots of different categories during this pandemic, all to make sure that ad messaging wasn't tone deaf. It was invaluable information for them, and Methodify can do the same for you because actual customer feedback is a game changer. Right now, that wait and see attitude that you have is going to wind up costing you lots of money in the back end when you make a lot of mistakes in the release of an unconsidered ad. Let's put it that way. Now, connect with your customers. Make sure that you're connecting with them regularly. Build relationships. It's always an important thing. Build trust, build fans, but test everything. And you can now because Methodify can get you started today. Now, to find out more about Methodify and to set up a demo, just Methodify it. Literally, go to methodify.it, Methodify it, /BeanCast. That's methodify.it/BeanCast. And as a way of saying thanks, every BeanCast listener who signs up and completes a demo is going to receive a $20 Amazon gift card just for your time. So you really have nothing to lose. So that address again is methodify.it/BeanCast. Find out more about them. Start testing. Be a better brand. And we thank them very much for their support of our program. Well, a look at TikTok shows you a brand that is dealing with all kinds of pressure, not just in the US, but around the world. A lot of people are getting cold feet over investing in the company, investing time, investing money, because of the connection to the Chinese government, or at least the perceived connection to the Chinese government, since this operation was started and the company that made it, ByteDance, is founded in China. Nevertheless, they've got a U.S. operation. They're doing things on this shore. They're not necessarily giving all this information to the Chinese government. It's really a conundrum for them. They're trying to work through it right now. Saul, what's your thoughts on TikTok? I mean, they've got very few options on the table. Maybe you could take us through a few of those options or which option you feel is best. And tell me a little bit more about what you would do with the TikTok situation.
Okay, so real quick, for those who don't know, the issue TikTok faces is the possibility to be placed on a U.S. entity list by President Trump, which basically forces like Apple and Google to ban them from their app store, essentially not reaching any American people. I'm not sure if it'd be North American as well. Obviously, U.S. entity would just be the U.S. territory. Concern, as you mentioned, Bob, is that, they got caught, I think it was a week or 2 weeks ago, snooping on people's phones, data, anonymous or not anonymous, nobody even really knows, back to China for whatever possible, uses. So there's the history. Let's look forward. A lot of people are scrambling to, save their investments, probably as well as save the momentum of the business. There's really kind of four things that they could do, and then I'll tell you what they should do at the end. So to go real quick, they could sell to U.S. investors. Personally, I don't know if the founder would do this because it would, based on potential future value, he could be leaving a huge amount of money on the table, and the opportunity for this is still growing as long as it doesn't get banned. They could sell just the U.S. side of the business. U.S. is important, but I was really surprised to see it's not that big of a pie for them. With India and Russia and China, the U.S. market is full, but it's by no way even near their biggest portion of their potential. They could split the company in two, have China and the rest of the world. interesting idea. TikTok is only one app in a larger family, but again, this limits future opportunity. Or final thing they could do is make the whole business an American company. I really don't see this happening, as it'd be really controversial towards the founder and their homeland, and he'd probably lose a fair bit of control. So what he should do, and what I think they should do, is literally do nothing. And the reason I think they should do nothing is, because kind of like finding a cure for COVID, I don't really think Trump is going to end up doing anything in the end. And I think it's going to be business as usual and status quo going forward. I've never been on TikTok. For John, I assume John's got a big following over there. As far as what the experience is like, it's not my bag. But I think it's just gonna, it's gonna keep growing as long as kids want to simulate whatever they're simulating to music and stuff like that. But I really I think this is kind of just, this is just a lot of pomp and circumstance. I could be wrong, but I don't think either side is gonna blink here and make a move. And we'll be right here next year talking about a possible ban or something, because it's just, I don't see anything happening.
Well, since we do have a TikTok influencer on the staff here tonight, John, since you're such a TikTok influencer, I'd love to get your thoughts on this. I mean, because TikTok is, in essence, it seems like an innocuous enough proposition. I mean, all it is showing a whole bunch of kids doing stupid stuff on video. I mean, that's all essentially the content is. But if they're snooping on phones and you've got U.S. law enforcement or soldiers or politicians who are being tracked by that information, that could be potentially, really, really serious for us. And it's something that we need to pay attention to. So is there any way out for TikTok? Is doing nothing really an option for them? Or is this, going to outlive the Trump administration in terms of its threat level?
Well, I'd have to agree with Saul. I don't see, we've got, 100 days to the election. I don't see pushing TikTok out of the U.S. as a top 10 issue for anybody to get any votes. So I'd be surprised. I don't know. I've always heard that the whole idea behind TikTok is just to catch young people and have these videos in the can. So 15 years from now, when they're running for political offices, China has all of the dirt on everyone. Yeah. And that completely makes sense to me. I can't come up with a better reason, except for what you said, funny short videos, which people will chew on forever. And there's a ton of data that follows it. So, but aside from that, how important is this really? I'm not sure.
We have to think of this beyond the fact that the Trump administration is currently doing this, because this is an issue that affects every single one of the political persuasions in the United States and around the world. I mean, it's not just the U.S. that's concerned about these moves by the Chinese government to use this information on TikTok. It has some ramifications that are affecting national security. And that's going to definitely outlive anything that the Trump administration is currently talking about. Not everything that the Trump administration does, very few things, but not everything that they do is completely driven by a reelection thought on his part.
Yeah, but I think this is sort of the equivalent of taking a child's toy away if you get rid of TikTok, because politicians, they're using China as a political football. I mean, what happened in Houston this week should concern a lot of folks, where they closed the consulate down there. But it's easier to do something like ban TikTok than it is to look at the physical products made in China, like 1 billion IoT devices in your smart home that can be compromised, and the data that you can glean by sneaking, by looking at people's home alarm webcams, or pressuring them to do something about human rights or intellectual property theft. TikTok, we can just get rid of that. It's an easier move. It would piss off a lot of young folks though, and when they get that TikTok, together, there's a lot of folks on it doing.
That's a really good influences. That's a really good point to make, Dan, is that TikTok has been a thorn in the Trump administration's side. So that's why it's so technicolor right now for them. TikTok users have banded together and did all kinds of what was it? They organized that protest. We talked about it a few weeks back, where
the tickets for his rally.
The tickets for the rally, but also for like filling the carts up on Trump merchandise, and then forcing the Trump campaign to spend all this money advertising to them to try to get them to, just realizing that a filled cart that was just sitting there was going to trigger all this extra ad spend on the part of the Trump administration. So, I mean, they've done all kinds of things to troll the Trump administration. So I know that's why, from a technical standpoint, that's why they're going for that. Why the Trump administration is so against it. But I mean, from a bigger standpoint, it is a potential liability for national security. So, having to do something makes sense as opposed to doing nothing.
This could actually be his reelection strategy if he bans TikTok about a week before the election. No one will be able to do advanced polling because they'll be consoling their 14-year-old daughters that they can't go on TikTok anymore. And if nobody comes out to vote, it's only the people in the hills that'll still vote for him. It's brilliant.
That's your October surprise, yeah.
Well, I think who was it who brought up I think it was Dan who brought up the smart home devices that are everywhere that are uncompromised. Yeah. I mean, it's just like at a certain point, how much does banning TikTok or banning smart devices or banning all kinds of things coming from China, how it doesn't really save us from the police state, because as we can see by what's going on right now, in the way that things are operating in the government, just because the U.S. is in control of it doesn't mean that people aren't still spying on us.
Well, and how about, it seems like Mark Zuckerberg is the huge winner here. They were the poster child for privacy, and now suddenly TikTok's here, and they can. They've shown up as Donald Trump to Zuckerberg's G.W. Bush.
Well, another big story that came out this week was there was a Forbes article that dealt with the fact that Google's so-called stupid AI, and I love that description of it, because in a lot of ways, the smartest AI on the planet is also one of the dumbest AIs on the planet, will get a brand to work by their keywords and try to buy those keywords for advertising and to enhance the search engine marketing, but will not be smart enough to realize that there's different uses of the same word, and that when you have a word that is triggering all kinds of things like, say porn, John, I mean, it's just like, it's going to slowly decrease your visibility and decrease your search ranking for the search term and make you pay more money for the right to use that search term, even though you're getting no benefit for what you're trying to be recognized for. Maybe you can explain it a little bit better than I did, but I think that's what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's, the problem is, and this is classic paid advertising, paid search ads, is, the pros understand about negative keywords. You have to go in there, and just because you throw in a bunch of keywords, don't think that it's going to be a dead match with what you do. And so this article was a guy whose company does AI models for a bunch of statistical analysis stuff. Well, when they had models in their ad campaigns, they started to get white girls, black girls, Asian girls, all kinds of interesting model related stuff. And so that they ended up having to, they basically take a search hit on that because they're getting irrelevant traffic that's causing organic troubles, and there's a lot going on. So, there's, you have to watch your paid thing. And there has been a little bit of a sea change I've seen over the past year and a half, because at first it was like everybody was just bidding and doing their thing. And then on all platforms, there's a lot more automated bidding options. And, there were cases where people shut off all the stupid filters that they had put up, 3 years of cruft, and the automated bidding started to do a better job. I'd heard crazy stories of agencies coming in, one guy from an agency turning off the work that 4, people at the company had done, and their results going up 20%. But now we're getting at the other end of that, where, some of these models are not doing the right kind of thing. And by getting in there and actually getting your hands dirty and looking at the results and what kind of stuff is happening, you can actually beat the AI, because the AI is going to go, Yeah, you could argue that it's going to always end up doing pills, porn, and casino because that's where the race to the bottom always goes. So yeah, you've got to keep track of your ad spend and watch what's happening and what kind of traffic you're bringing in, and have your negative keywords ready to go to spare your budget, or you're going to get burned.
Is this only about negative keywords, though? I mean, because it seems to me that if somebody puts together a campaign and uses the right negative keywords, but is still not quite aligning with what their search term is, they're going to end up with all kinds of problems down the line. I mean, it's just like it feels to me, and I think the way the article framed it, that if you're going wrong, Google should have something in there that says, hey, something's happening here. Your search ranking is going down. Maybe you should take a look at this, or maybe we can help you, or something like that. But no, what they do, the way the system works, is your search ranking goes down, your price goes up, and you end up with a huge bill for no results. And that seems like it's a flaw, an intentional flaw built into the system that generates additional profits for no value.
You still haven't hit a point, though, where I think Google, so why would Google jump in to do anything about this? This seems to be, the normal procedure.
But that's that's bad business. I mean, it's bad business to take advantage of your customers. I learned that from watching American Pickers. I mean, I watch American Pickers on History Channel, and I can tell that, Mike always gives a fair price no matter what. I mean, it's just like, even if somebody comes in a little low, he doesn't take advantage of it. He says, no, not going to give you $300. I was thinking more like $500. It seems like good business says you don't take advantage of your customers. You build in systems that help the customers get the most possible value, because when that, as Marketing 101 teaches you, when the value exchange gets out of alignment, people don't see as much value in it anymore, and they're not going to want to spend money with you.
Yeah, that's, everything you said is dead on, but there's too many marks out there. It's just free money when that comes in. I guess for the more advanced advertisers, they could build something in there to allow you to dial it in and discourage certain types of traffic. But yeah, again, they got to get those quarterly numbers, man. It's all about growth.
Mm. Well, even if they didn't do anything about the numbers, even if they didn't do anything about the overcharging, I mean, the fact that they're also penalizing that brand or penalizing that company by, lowering their search ranking because somehow they're obviously not having a subject that is interesting to the people who are searching their product, even though those people are searching for the wrong thing, something that's completely different from them. I mean, it doesn't feel like it's somehow built to be fair to the customer. It's built to be fair to the expert SEO analysts, like, the SEO consultants of the world are the ones who are going to be the only ones able to use the system anymore, as opposed to this big promise that goes out to a lot of small businesses, which says that this is a self-serve platform and anybody can do it, which is not true. Not anybody can do it. I mean, just you talking about negative keywords. How many people have you ever worked with who are not regularly dealing with SEO, have ever been able to articulate the fact that, oh, are you taking care of my negative keywords? I mean, people don't even think about that.
No, and it's the same people that are just like, wow, I don't know, we threw $2,000 at this, we got 5 clicks. What happened? I don't know. It's that's a lot of how search marketing works. There's just a huge churn.
Now, of course, I kept most of this conversation to John because John is the one person who understands SEO on this panel to any kind of deep level. But does anybody else want to weigh in? Anybody else have any thoughts on this?
No, I mean, I think that the article that the fellow who wrote about it when he talked about models and the problem he was having was suggesting that, turning it back to the humans and giving maybe the system suggests a few good business outcomes. A few good different suggestions is probably, it sounds to me like a pretty sensible idea. When the AI isn't working, you've got to get the humans back in to figure it out.
Yeah, this is a great example of why brands should be investing in people like me that do experience marketing.
Not to be self-serving or anything there, Saul, but that sounds great.
I'm not going to rob you.
Well, last but not least, Nielsen is still trying to get people to believe in their digital measurement methodology again. So what they're doing is they are completely revamping it, pushing it back again to 2021 and saying that that's when we're going to have digital measurement. Dan, I know this is not necessarily your perfect arena. This is not where you spend most of your days. But,
Yeah.
From a standpoint of digital measurement, this is a really important part of the TV universe. I mean, TV is going online, and making sure that the digital portion of the broadcast audience is getting accurately measured is going to be essential for the continued health of all the networks, of anybody who's doing streaming content. So,
Yeah.
Is this pushback a good sign for the business, or do you feel like it's just Nielsen casting about trying to find a way to satisfy their customers, but really the chances of them doing that are slim to none?
Well, they do have to get it right, but the longer that they delay, the more changes there are going to be. They're chasing a moving target with all the shifts in the platforms and the technology and the way people are consuming different programming. When I was a kid, we were a Nielsen family for a week, and we wrote down, we had a diary. Literally, we wrote down what we were watching on our one TV back in the day. So they obviously can't do that anymore, and they have to measure a lot of variables, like, are you watching the one program on a couple of different devices, or what constitutes, how many seconds in do you watch it, or how many minutes in counts as actually watching a show. It's pretty complicated. I'll grant them that it would be very hard to get right, but the more they delay it,
But it
more
should be
problematic
easy.
it's
It
going to
should
be.
be easier, though. I mean, that's the whole promise of digital. Has always been that we don't need to do diaries anymore. Now we can measure electronically how many people are in the room. What's the attention level of those people in the room? How many minutes do they sit on a program? It's just like all of that is digitally measured.
But you still have the same problems. You don't know who's actually watching. Are they concentrated on the programming?
They've
or
got
they just have
eyes
it
in their
on,
They've got cameras. You know that they do.
I'm just mad that they canceled my favorite show when I was a kid. They didn't ask me if I was watching it, but the low ratings just canceled the show. It had better ratings because I was watching it, but they didn't ask me.
So I'm loath to ask you about this because you don't necessarily have to deal with Nielsen. I'm not sure Nielsen has any kind of presence in Canada, but what's your thoughts on the whole measurement malaise and what Nielsen's doing?
Well, I think Nielsen has been trying to, almost like validate their existence for the last decade or so. And there's always been, it's like it's coming, and we're reinventing it, we're this, we're that. As digital that's greater and greater, and as TV falls off, I think the thing that they just sort of had going for them for the longest time is, why did you invest in TV? Because it works. And it's like, why is TV so expensive? Because it works. And that's sort of the thing that's been ingrained in people for so long. And now, as TV is changing, like with there was a really interesting story 2 weeks ago where a lot of NBC affiliates refused to show the 30 Rock reunion because it was just an hour-long ad for the Peacock streaming service that would essentially the affiliates redundant and probably irrelevant. I just think this is like a classic example of a giant company that's really trying to hold on to their, I won't call it a monopoly,
go back for a second. Classic
industry that really.
You said a classic example of, and then you cut out. So
Yeah.
What's it a classic example of?
Oh, it's a classic example of a giant company that had, maybe not a monopoly, but a real stronghold on an industry. They were an industry standard, and their product or their industry just moved away from them. And they're still screaming over here, waving their hands, saying, "Look at us, come back." And it's like they don't really know how to deal with this right now, because it's like you can track just about everything now except how many people are in the room, how many people are a thing. Did you not even Netflix knows if you're still watching, because they ask you after every 3 episodes, And
Yeah,
they're
every three
still
episodes.
watching and stuff like that. Like
Exactly.
they know that people like wander around. So it's just something else. It's like they're not they're not the resource they once were.
John, I gotta go to you next. You're the digital measurement expert. Of course, you're not in dealing with Nielsen on a regular basis, but you do understand that what the importance of Nielsen getting this right is. Tell me, are there any other metrics out there, any other systems out there in place right now that can potentially step into this gap and maybe derail what Nielsen's doing? Or do we absolutely need Nielsen to figure this out so that the measurement of TV in the streaming space and the digital space is accurate?
There's a guy, Bradley Shapiro, out of University of Chicago. I got to make sure I get that right. He's in Chicago, but it's not University of Chicago. But he's done all kinds of crazy stuff where they go in and they'll even do stuff where they know, which ads are being shown on which side of the street, and they can see if it gives any lift to pricing. So there's tons of stuff out there. But the thing that gets me is, we have the technology. Nielsen could just say, look, who wants the free Nielsen TV? And they get the TV, and it's a huge, awesome TV. And it's got a camera on it, so it's always watching to see how many people are in front of it, and it keeps track of every minute of every hour of every day of what channel it's on and what's showing. I mean, the technology is there for all that, so it's just a matter of how far do they really want to go and what do they think they can really get done. I mean, we have the infrastructure.
Is that true though? Because it's even if they come up with a Nielsen TV and distribute it for free to families who want to sign up for this, it's going to disproportionately affect the poorest of Americans or the poorest households, because anybody who has money is going to say, I don't want Nielsen looking in on me. So you're not really going to get a cross section of the U.S. with that kind of methodology. I mean, don't you think that would be a big hurdle with that? Because I love the idea. I mean, in theory, it's a great idea, but in practice, it sounds impractical.
Yeah, well, but even not going that far. How about okay, everybody in America, you want to chop $100 off your cable bill? Are you willing to share all your cable data? I mean, but that's a huge biz debt. And I'm the last guy to talk about. I know nothing about the deals between these cable companies and the ad agencies and the networks. I mean, it's might as well be the mafia, as far as I know. But that data is there too. I mean, everybody's got a cable box running that has a log on it. I mean, what's happening with that?
That's a good point. Anybody else have any closing thoughts? I mean, Dan, what are your thoughts on John's thinking here about making cable data available? I mean, that seems to be where things are heading in a lot of ways. I mean, that's what 5G is all about. We've talked about that many times on the show. 5G is about the phone company centralizing data as the transaction phone data as their own fiefdom. These third parties will be shut out from all this data, or at least have less effective location data than the phone companies are going to have. So the same thing's true with the cable companies. The cable companies could potentially put a bottleneck on that data and say that we are your source of data, Nielsen. You just got to, pay us a certain amount of money and we'll sell you that data.
Yeah, but the same. But the issue is that you're bringing up this idea of cable companies. Well, there are cord cutters, and there are folks who are using Fire TV sticks, or they're using Hulu, or they're maybe they still have a dish. I mean, you've got everybody's got a different setup at home. It's not even the way it was when cable had such a large penetration. So
for all I know about
example of America is good luck.
for all I know, they're already doing that. I mean, it's just like, I'm not an expert on this space, but they probably are going after this data anyway. Oh, well, it's time for our fair, fail, foul. But before we get to that segment of the show, I do want to take this quick opportunity to thank my guests again and allow them to each do a shameless plug, starting with Saul Colt. You can find him at theideaintegration.com. That's the home of the Idea Integration Company, the company where he is an experiential consultant working with brands all over the world. Tell us what's going on in your world, Saul. What would you like to promote?
I've just wrapped up a project that in like 2 weeks I'll be able to share with people. I'm always here at the wrong time, but always happy to be here, Bob, so don't think I'm complaining. But there's room for one new
Saul,
project.
Saul, before we get to the fair,
Have room.
Saul, before we get to the fair, fail, foul, you might want to restart your computer real quick or something because it's like you're breaking up really bad and we're losing you. But we did get at least the first part of your thing. I'll come back to you in a second. Dan Goldgeyer is next on the list. Now, you can get more information about Dan at dangoldgeyer.com. The link will be in the show notes. Tell us, Dan, what's going on in your world? What would you like to promote?
Well, you can hire me to do your copywriting or strategy. I can even help you figure out your brand purpose. You can go see me at dangoldgeyer.com. Or if you are sitting at home and you're staying safe and you want something to amuse you, you can go on to Amazon and order my book, Killer Executions and Scrub Decks, an outside-the-box look at obnoxious advertising and marketing jargon. And of course, all proceeds go to feed my dog.
Those dogs eat very well, I'm sure. Now, last but not least, we have John Wall. You can find him at both marketingovercoffee.com, which is the home of the show that he co-hosts, a show that is seminal in the marketing space on podcasting. And also, he is at trustinsights.ai. It's a company where he is a partner at. Tell us, what's going on in your world, John? What would you like to promote?
Oh, I've got, I can do this. I've got two copies of the Marketing Over Coffee playbook here. So if you connect to me on Twitter at John J. Wall and tell me you want a copy, I'll go ahead and send one out to you because I would like to get these out of my office. That would be a wonderful thing. And Bradley Shapiro, professor, is at University of Chicago booth.
Fantastic. As for me, for more information about me or the show, visit thebeancast.com. There you can find a complete show archive. You can find out how to consult with me about getting your brand on a podcast or working with me on strategy. And you can even find out how to advertise on this program. So check it all out at thebeancast.com. And now it is time for this week's Fair, Fail, Foul, a rundown of the best and worst of advertising, marketing, and public relations from the last week. First up, Jerry Schumann, who is a brand strategist and was looking to get an interview at TikTok. So he came up with the creative idea of getting Carol Baskin, who was currently selling video recorded messages for $121 to record. If you don't know who Carol Baskin is, she's the infamous person from the Tiger King show. It was on Netflix. Yes, Carol killed her husband. Mm-hmm. Anyway, got her to record a message on his behalf, essentially saying that, the only thing that's a conspiracy and the only thing that needs to be, that she doesn't understand is why they haven't called this guy in for an interview yet. It got a little viral, push behind it, and it did pretty well overall. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, why not? If he's trying to get a job at TikTok, send him a TikTok. You figure out you got to know what you're getting involved in and know your audience and know your employer. I mean, it beats the old trick, sending an ad agency a boot in the mail with the card that says, "I just want to get my foot in the door." Everybody's got a stunt that they could try. I never did that, but why not?
Well, it got him an interview, so I mean that's a plus. Yeah. I mean, it did well. And I had another positive thing, another fair for this week. It's my show; I can do two of each. It's okay. Burger King, John, decided to declare Christmas in July because 2020 is just too long. Now, I love the tongue-in-cheekness of this, but they went all out. They were decorating locations. They were putting up lights. I mean, they were really decking this thing out as a Christmas in July. It was pretty awesome in my view.
Yeah, that's a gutsy play. I'm not sure what the heck I would think if I drove by a Christmas decked out Burger King in July, but I'll give them credit for trying something bold.
Yeah, it was pretty nice. Now, the fail for this week, there was an editor of Cosmopolitan in Sri Lanka. It was back in 2017. Apparently, Kanita Shenoy, I hope I got her name pronounced right, was sent skin whitening cream, Dan. Just samples for a cosmetic brand Pond's shortly after becoming editor over there at Cosmopolitan. She told parent company Unilever, who makes Pond's, that she would never promote the creams, and then they later pulled advertising after the magazine refused to fire her, which of course led to her eventually being forced to step down and losing her job and kind of marring her career as a result of it. This sounds like the worst of advertising in every way, shape, and form, does it not?
Yeah, the Pond is one of the manufacturers. Also, Unilever also controls a brand called Fair and Lovely, which I wrote about a long, long time ago. It's a skin whitening cream, and the product is bad enough, but the crass way they market it in some of these countries is way worse. You're not going to get a job, you're not going to get married, you're not going to do anything unless you lighten your skin. And to the discussion we were having earlier, this is the parent company of Dove, which has been talking about the campaign for real beauty, but yet they turn around and they market this thing in other countries under different names for different purposes. So
Unilever has always had that problem. I mean, that's, Dove has always had that kind of very forward-thinking stance as a brand, and they've shown a lot of quote-unquote purpose, but at the same time, this is the company that made Axe body spray, which was doing all kinds of really, really salacious ads that were objectifying women in the same company. So it's an ongoing problem with them, but something that they'll hopefully take care of. The other bad thing, the other fail of the week for me, was the Trump ad about chaos in the U.S. actually used photos, John, from pro-democracy rallies in the Ukraine. I thought this was great. I mean, the irony of them saying that it's going to devolve into chaos when it was showing pictures of Ukrainians fighting for, democracy within their country, fighting for a positive thing.
This I don't get any of this. It's like the daily insanity. It's like we have all these demonstrations going on about violence and authoritarian command, but we just keep pouring people into it. And so it does not surprise me at all that they'll do anything to spin the story and to try and keep people worked up over it.
Now I think I have Saul back. Do I have Saul back now?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, great. Because the travel industry, we're getting into the fouls of this week. The first foul we have is from Google, because the travel industry has been saying that they're looking for some kind of advertising relief from Google for first quarter bills as a result of them spending all this money with the company but not getting any value from that advertising whatsoever. Of course, Google is being resistant, saying, well, it's your problem. You advertised, and we can't be responsible for the fact that the economy downturned, but nanny foo-foo, we're keeping your money. This sounds like more of the same stuff that we talked about earlier about Google really needs to be a better steward of their customers, is it not?
Not really when you're the only game in town, or at least, partially the only game in town. The thing that I thought was most interesting was the company that was sort of quoted in this article was Axel Heffer, the CEO of Trivago. And I know the Trivago guy in the commercials isn't the CEO, but in my head as I read that, I read his quote as that guy, and it made the article way more interesting.
And while I have you and have you back, do you have anything more you want to pitch about yourself?
Just if you guys are looking for me, just go to bideaintegration.com. That's all.
Okay, fantastic. And last but not least, the second foul of this week, John, another Google foul. Google has been shown to match black girls, the search term black girls, and the search term Asian girls, and the search term Latina girls to porn sites, but not white girls. White girls are not linked to porn sites. They're linked to white girl things, I suppose. So what's up?
Well, this is not as terrible as it seems, which seems really terrible. But I think the deal is that the default for porn is white. It's a American-centric thing. That's the problem. People in America are searching for the most porn, and they don't have to look for white girls. They just want girls gone crazy or whatever. So I would say this is just proof that there's an American bias to the thing.
Well, have a suggestion for this list?
And also, if you've
Go
ever
ahead.
watched pornography, well, I was going to say, if you've ever watched pornography, you know that all white girls look the same, so there's no need to actually classify them in a
Well, have a suggestion for this list or just want to discuss it, comment online, use the hashtag FairFailFoul. That's #FairFailFoul. And that does it for this week's show. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, visit our website at thebeancast.com and click on the subscribe link. If you're an Apple Podcasts listener, we've also provided a direct link to our listing there, or just search for the BeanCast in the podcast directory on the Apple Podcasts app. And whichever podcast directory you use, when you subscribe, please leave us a review. Got a comment? Have a question? We'd love to hear from you. Just send your emails to beancast@gmail.com. Opening theme was performed by Joe Seibel. Closing theme by C. Jax. Thanks for listening. I'm Bob Norp. We'll be back again next week. Hope you'll join us then.
It's like, you know what I mean? It's like if it's, you know what I mean? I don't know, man. Just like, okay, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like totally like that. It's like, I don't know, like if it's, you know, it's like, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's just like kind of, it just seems like it's just like almost exactly. It's like exactly. Yeah. You know what I mean? Exactly.
Cool beans.